the dark hush of nighttime, where air holds its breath and the sky is endless and attentive, the world seems wrapped in a velvet stillness. The moon hangs quietly above rooftops, shedding soft silver on empty lanes and closed doors. Night has a way of coaxing old aches to the surface, of making every memory echo a little louder. Tonight, under that ancient dome of stars, a sky that has witnessed every secret cry, every trembling hope, there is a woman. She lies alone beside a narrow window, her hand splayed loosely across her chest, feeling the rhythm of a heart well acquainted with disappointment. It has been many years since laughter had come to her lips unbidden, many more since the innocence of joy danced in her eyes. Time has not been gentle. Her body bears the scars of invisible battles, her spirit bruised by the burden of being unseen. The room itself is simple, humble. Shadows gather in the corners, and the only sound is the gentle pulse of her breathing. Sometimes, with the world asleep, she allows the tears to slip quietly, for there is nobody left to hear. Her mind drifts over the years as night air seeps through old wood. She remembers festivals when she watched from a distance, hearing the colors of celebration, but never stepping within them. She recalls the way neighbors averted their eyes, conversations that stopped when she passed by, the constant, weary ache in her bones, a pain deeper than body, festering quietly where hope once lived. She has prayed, oh, she has prayed. At first, her prayers were bold, even expectant. She would reach for heaven with outstretched hands, believing perhaps the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob might notice her voice amid the chorus of his beloved people. With time, her prayers became softer, whispers folding in on themselves, fervent yet fragile, stitched with uncertainty. Does God hear the quiet? Does he see the ones lost at the edge of the crowd? But sometimes, in the unraveling quiet of the night, doubts teem beneath her ribs. Perhaps her suffering has drowned out heaven's favor. Perhaps she is invisible. But what if that ache in your heart is where he's been trying to speak all along? What if the emptiness is not forsakenness, but the doorway through which grace will one day enter? Her thoughts swirl, restless as leaves in autumn wind. For 12 long years, her body has known illness, a relentless bleeding that takes from her every drop of strength, every ounce of dignity. She has spent all she had on healers who only deepened her despair. The Torah reminds her that she is unclean. To the world, she is to be avoided, untouched, untouchable. Isolation becomes her companion. Yet in the silence, as everyone sleeps, she asks the same question night upon night. Could healing still find me, even after all this time? She turns onto her side, listening, attentive to some faint whisper that might break the monotony of night. But only her own heart answers. Still, she lets hope have a foothold, if only for a moment. An ancient psalm slips into her thoughts, soft and trembling as moth wings. And as it is written in the book of Psalms, chapter 61, verses 1 and 2, hear my cry, O God, attend unto my prayer. From the end of the earth will I cry unto thee when my heart is overwhelmed. Lead me to the rock that is higher than I. She says it quietly, the words tumbling with the tears she no longer bothers to wipe away. It is not the voice of a woman certain of rescue. No, hers is the prayer of the brokenhearted, the unseen, the weary who clutch the last thin thread. Could it be that God gathers even these quiet tears, the ones nobody else knows about? She drifts at last into uneasy rest, caught somewhere between ache and longing, her last thought a fragile plea. If you see me, Lord, if you hear me, let mercy find its way. But what if, just beyond the horizon of this night, a new story is waiting to unfold? What if the darkness is not the end, but the threshold of healing? As dawn waits beneath the rim of night, so does her hope, curled tenderly in the silence. And you, where do you find yourself in this gentle hush, in the stretch of night? Has your heart ever whispered prayers that only God has heard? If so, stay a while. Let us linger in the darkness a little longer together. Are you ready to discover what happens when the unknown becomes the beginning of everything new? The shadows are not quite finished speaking. She remembers, as if from a far-off dream, those earliest years when hope was not a stranger, but a constant, bright companion. She was young then, laughter blooming as naturally as breath, her steps light and unburdened. Her mother would brush stray strands of hair from her forehead and say, "Child, the Lord delights in you." Her father would swing her high and call her precious, chosen, beloved. But the years have measured out her hope in smaller and smaller portions. Each calendar's turning, each season's passing, wrapped pain more closely around her like an unwanted cloak. In the quiet hush of twilight, she traces the lines of her hands and remembers a time before weariness. The illness descended so softly at first, a tiredness, a hush of discomfort, easily dismissed. But the days stretched on, and discomfort turned into something more, a constant drain, an ache that pressed its signature on her every waking hour. Friends began to fade. First, it was the invitations that stopped coming, then the visits, then the glances. The world, slow and subtle, inched away, drawing lines she could not cross. Even the sound of her own name became rare. She would sometimes whisper it aloud, testing its shape, just to remember what it felt like when someone called her. The silence that followed was a second affliction, wound tightly around her heart. She would sing softly to herself to pierce the hush, old lullabies half remembered from youth. At night, she would press her hand to her chest and try to feel the spark that once lived there. Sometimes, despair would creep in, soft, insidious. The question took on a weight of its own. Does God still see me? If He is watching, does He turn away in sorrow, or just slip quietly into the busyness of sustaining greater souls. Yet Scripture offered its anchor, glimmering even in the thickest fog. She clung to the words of Isaiah, and as it is written in the book of Isaiah, chapter 43, verse 1, "But now thus saith the Lord that created thee, O Jacob, and he that formed thee, O Israel, fear not, for I have redeemed thee. I have called thee by thy name, thou art mine." Could it be, even in this hour, even in this invisible exile, had the God of her ancestors not forgotten her? She would repeat the verse, a whispered hope against the tide of years. But hope, after so many disappointments, becomes dangerous. She would rise sluggishly in the gray morning, feeling older than her years, watching from the doorway as life swept past. Others hugged and laughed and quarreled and wept. Little children played and called for their mothers. She wondered at the ache of being nobody's child anymore, untouchable, overlooked. Could the Lord of heaven see the unseen? She sometimes thought she glimpsed him in the beauty of dawn, in the hidden melody of a dove's call through her window. But the question still dug its claws. Was she overlooked not just by people, but by God as well? Perhaps you know this ache, this wilderness where hope itself becomes suspect. It is a lonely country, but what if the emptiness you feel is not a barren desert, but the ground God chooses for seeds of mercy to be sown? She waited. She persisted in praying, not with certainty, but with the hunger of one who has nowhere else to turn. Her prayers grew simpler, stripped of pleasantries or elaborate words. They carried only what was left of her heart. Evening again. The world hushed and holy. She sat by her lamp, shadows moving gently on the walls, and asked the question that would not die, "Does God still see me?" Would you ask it with her? Deeply, honestly, as the night draws its comfort around you. If I am forgotten, Lord, would you remember me? Faith sometimes rests on the sharp edge of desperation, and sometimes, in the waiting, a flicker small, almost unnoticeable, finds its way back into the darkness. What if that flicker is the beginning of all things new? What if, even now, the God who formed the stars is listening for the sound of your breath? Can you imagine the risk of hoping once again? Before this chapter ends, the question remains unanswered, suspended in the still air. What might happen if your name, too, is formed on the lips of the Almighty? Stay present. Something is stirring on the wind, just out of reach. On this evening, so like the others, yet in some secret way different, the breeze carries a name through the narrow lanes. It is spoken on the lips of passers-by, rising above the dusty hush, passing from courtyard to street corner. The name is Jesus. She has heard the name before, always faint, like the murmur of distant thunder before the downpour. Some said he was a teacher, a rabbi from Nazareth, carving wonders from the ordinary. Others whispered of healings, the blind made to see, the cripple leaping, the tormented in their right mind. The stories clung to her spirit like dew, moistening the dry soil of her hope. She listens from her threshold, hidden in shadow. Neighbors gather in clusters, talking with urgency she has not heard in many years. Words like miracle, power, and compassion fill the air, swirling around her like petals in spring wind. Always, it is his name at the center, anointed, mysterious, magnetic. She draws her shawl closer, standing just out of sight. Some fragment of long-buried longing rises, ancient and restless. Could he be near? Could the one whose reputation kindles wonder be walking these very roads? What stirs within her is as fragile as spider silk, trembling between fear and impossible desire. To go would mean braving the crowded streets, risking the cruel stares and the pressing bodies. Her pain walks with her, and so does her shame. Besides, she has no more answers, only an ache where faith once was. But then another thought slips in, unbidden. What if distance is all that stands between her and a new beginning? What would it cost to try, even if the price is one more disappointment to add to the heavy ledger of her heart? The chatter outside grows louder. Someone is calling. He's coming. Jesus is making his way down the road, just beyond the market. The night feels charged with a possibility so foreign it nearly frightens her. Is it really possible that this one so holy, so full of stories and endless mystery, might pass within reach of her outstretched hand? Could hope warrant risking everything just this once? But what does it truly cost to reach for grace with nothing left to barter except a heart in ruins? What if the cost is simply willingness? As she leans further into the shadow, uncertainty gnaws within her. If she goes, she trespasses boundaries, both social and spiritual. Her weakness trembles beneath the weight of what-ifs, but her spirit, battered but not yet broken, begins to ask another question. What if Jesus is the answer her loneliness could never find on its own? Beyond the questions, something ancient and hallowed burns in her bones, almost like a whisper, almost like a dare. A psalm stirs in her mind, wrapping around her fear like gentle arms. And as it is written in the book of Psalms, chapter 34, verse 18, the Lord is nigh unto them that are of a broken heart, and saveth such as be of a contrite spirit. If the Lord is near to the brokenhearted, could he be close enough to hear hers? The air itself seems to vibrate with expectancy, as if the whole earth is holding its breath. She edges further to the doorway, the lamp flickering in her hand. Her heart is pounding. Feet pass on the street. There are voices, laughter, weeping, life. And just beyond, the stir continues. Jesus is near. But what if the flame of hope, long buried, is the key to everything? Are you willing, too, to wonder what might happen if you let yourself lean forward toward the possibility that God walks closer than you thought? The road waits, the name lingers, the story is growing brighter. But will she step forward, or will fear win another night? Sometimes, the greatest healing lies just beyond our bravest reach. Let your heart stay curious until the morning. Hope is a dangerous thing, especially for one who has lived so long in its absence. It flickers and stings, and yet, against all odds, the woman finds her spirit leaning quietly into its glow. Something unknown and insistent rises inside her, as if her bones remember a joy she thought had died. In the stillness before dawn, she sits beside a jar of oil, nervously rubbing her hands together. She closes her eyes and again hears the name Jesus rolling through the silence, echoing deep in the chambers of her soul. Why does it stir her so? Is it the way people speak of him, as if he carries water for the thirsty, as if the air changes when he draws near? She imagines, just for a moment, what it would be to glimpse his face in the crowd. Would hope ignite or shatter? Even as she wrestles with her fears, another question pulses. What if the longing itself, so sharp, so hungry, is God's invitation, not God's absence? Could the ache in her spirit be holy ground, meant to be honored rather than hidden? A memory wells up, a story heard in synagogue long ago, of how the Lord heard Hagar's cry in the wilderness, of how he finds the unseen and names them beloved. Maybe, just maybe, God notices the silent tears, the trembling desire for something more. Still, her hands betray her anxiety. What if she goes and he is disappointed? What if her desperation makes her ridiculous, her presence an offense? Yet the pulse of longing is stronger than her shame. Her feet itch to move. She half rises, then sits again, torn by the cost of hope, the risk of trust. But what if your longing is not your weakness, but the doorway to your miracle? The night sky outside stretches wide, indifferent and eternal. But here, in this small room, one soul begins to tremble awake. She gathers her shawl, breath shivering in her chest. She is almost ready. From a battered scroll by her pallet, she recalls a verse. And as it is written in the book of Psalms, chapter 42, verse 11, "Why art thou cast down, O my soul? And why art thou disquieted in me? Hope thou in God, for I shall yet praise him, who is the health of my countenance and my God." Maybe after all these years, she might risk hoping once again. Maybe Jesus is not just for others, but for her. What is it about him that makes even the broken wish to start again? Her fingertips touch the fabric of her robe, longing and fear mingling in every breath. The city lies silent, waiting for its own miracle. She is awake, illuminated by the possibility that pain is not the end of her story. But what will happen if she lets go of her old fears and steps into the crowd? Hope crackles quietly, dangerous, but alive. Are you willing to follow your longing wherever it leads? The hour is near. Will you come further with her? Tomorrow waits at the boundary of humility and promise. She rises before dawn, slipping out beneath a sky woven with stars, a tapestry of ancient promise. Each step on the uneven stones feels like a question, a whispered plea sent up to the heavens that have so often felt silent. With each stride, she draws her shawl tighter. The city is just waking. Doors creak, merchants murmur, but all she hears is the racing of her heart and the silent companion of shame, never trailing far behind. She knows what the others say when she passes: unclean, unworthy. Yet tonight the word, hope, has claimed a stubborn corner of her soul, emboldening her to walk these forbidden streets. She moves in shadow, keeping to the sides, careful not to brush too closely against those she passes. Her suffering is invisible to them, except in the way they look through her or away. She remembers the children who once sang her name. Now they fall suddenly quiet, their mothers clutching them near. Pain and shame walk in lockstep beside her, but tonight, longing presses her onward. With each street, the noise ahead swells, a living current humming toward a single, unseen center. Jesus, the name is everywhere. It is on lips and in whispers, in songs and in skeptical laughter. She asks herself over and over, what will I find when I finally see him? Will I dare approach, or see myself through others' eyes and falter? All she knows is that to stop now would be worse than to try and fail. The crowd thickens as she nears the square, some craning to glimpse him, others jealously guarding their corner. Children on tiptoe, mothers carrying babies, old men leaning heavily on staffs. There is talk of a synagogue leader desperate for help, a swirl of rumors. And still, her inner voice murmurs, is healing really possible, even for me? Or am I too late? Shame slithers around her ankles, but hope beckons her forward. But what if your own woundedness is the very place God longs to meet you? She presses on, unseen, but not unseeing. The roughness of the crowd, the noise, the jostle, each one a hurdle, each a test of her resolve. The edge of the crowd feels like the rim of another world, a world to which she has never belonged. Yet she keeps walking, one step, then another, her breath an offering, her pain a quiet companion. Will she find what she seeks? Or is she simply chasing shadows, longing for what cannot be? Even now, she cannot turn back. The longing burns brighter than the shame. And you, what keeps you moving forward tonight, even when fear presses close? Stay close. The story is only just beginning to move. At the edge of the great assembly, she lingers, half hidden in the shadow of an olive tree. The crowd is like a living sea, surging, unpredictable, overwhelming. People jostle to get closer, faces lit with a blend of hope, excitement, even desperation. This is not a gathering for the faint of heart. The throng is thick and unyielding, elbows brushing, sandals shuffling, voices raised in excited chorus. She watches how the others press in, some calling his name, some pleading, some just yearning to see a miracle spill into their ordinary life. She is so close. If she stands on tiptoe, she can see the back of Jesus, his robe dusted by the day, his head slightly bowed as he listens with deep attention to another's plea. He is so near, and yet the distance feels infinite. What chance does a forgotten soul have in a crowd like this? She pulls her shawl tighter. Every instinct whispers, "Stay here where it's safe." You know your place on the edge, never noticed. But something inside her rebels, a fierce tiny flame refusing to be snuffed out. She sees faces in the crowd, many that she recognizes. Others she has only glimpsed from behind closed shutters. Some are wealthy, wrapped in fine robes. Some poor, eyes brimming with hunger. No one sees her. Or if they do, she is but a shadow, a memory people would rather forget. Even so, she is drawn forward by something far stronger than her fear. A child, perched on his father's shoulders, laughs in delight as Jesus speaks to a kneeling man. That laugh jars her, reminding her of who she once was, and who she still hopes, in some hidden place, to become. But what if there really is no crowd too large, no soul too small for Jesus to notice? She edges closer, careful and quiet. Dust swirls around her feet. The murmurs are louder here, the prayers more urgent. She dares not catch anyone's eye. The possibility of disappointment looms, heavy and vast. What if he does not see her? What if she comes all this way, only to leave with an emptier heart than before? Still, hope is insistent. She remembers the words from the scrolls, spoken by a prophet who knew exile and loneliness firsthand. And as it is written in the book of Isaiah, chapter 41, verse 10, "Fear thou not, for I am with thee. Be not dismayed, for I am thy God. I will strengthen thee, yea, I will help thee, yea, I will uphold thee with the right hand of my righteousness." Could these ancient words be true for her, even here, even now? She lingers, her heart pounding, her spirit stretched thin across the chasm, separating her from the one they say can heal. But the longing is too great, and the story is not done. Can you imagine pressing forward unseen, yet fiercely hoping to be found? What is it that pushes your soul to hope against hope? There is more yet to discover. She clings to the edge of the crowd, heart a wild bird fluttering against the ribs of her shame. She is so near now, close enough that the back of Jesus' robe sways just ahead, golden thread catching the sun's breath. But she knows she does not need his attention, does not seek to trouble him. No words, no display. She asks of him only a fragment of a fragment, just the edge of his robe, just this quiet reaching. Her hand, so rarely allowed near another, trembles as she dares to reach forward. For a flicker of a moment, she fears she will lose her courage. He may turn, he may rebuke, he may see her, and what would he see then? But something desperate, the voice of shattered longing, speaks in her spirit. "If I may touch but his clothes, I shall be whole." She steps forward, elbow brushing against a stranger. Shame crackles beneath her ribs, but hope refuses to be silenced. She wonders, what if I am seen? What if he turns and finds me out, a woman unworthy, unclean, foolish for even hoping. But even as her heart asks, her soul already knows there is nothing else left to lose. Her fingers stretch, inches from the hem of his garment, worn and holy with dust and healing. But what if the quietest prayer, the invisible reaching of a wounded soul, is the one God hears most clearly? The crowd surges, voices rise, the world spins, but she has never been more determined. If only for the chance to be made whole. She draws a trembling breath, closes her eyes, and lets her hand fall gently, quietly to the edge of his robe. What will he do if he turns and discovers the desperate hunger behind the touch? She cannot answer, only trust the longing. And you, what are you reaching for tonight, in the silence of your own heart? Every chapter ends with longing, every soul with unfinished pleas. Stay close. Stillness is drawing near. The moment her fingers brush the fabric, the world narrows to a point of aching, shattering stillness. There is the warmth of cloth, unexpected and immediate. And then deeper than skin, deeper than the hurt that has become her lifelong companion, a sudden, surging peace unfolds within her. It is as if time holds its breath. A wave of energy ripples through her, more real than breath, more whole than memory. She feels herself rooted to the earth, grounded and electrified all at once. The ache at her core, the silent suffering suddenly, strangely ebbs. For the first time in years, her pain recedes, replaced by a radiance that weaves through her bones, her muscles, her very blood. Could it be? Did it really happen? She does not dare move. Relief washes gently, like water over parched earth. She looks down, hand still trembling at her side. Her heart rate slows, the noise of the crowd fading to a hush around her. A deep knowing begins to unfurl. Something is different now, something holy. Tears bloom in her eyes, hot and surprised. She wants to laugh, to shout, to fall to her knees, but silence wins. She stands, caught in the sweet ache of the impossible. And as it is written in the book of Psalms, chapter 147, verse 3, He healeth the broken in heart, and bindeth up their wounds. Is it possible that the scriptures meant her all along? That even the neglected, the cast off, the invisible could find mending at the gentle hand of the Lord? She senses the movement of the crowd, their conversation shimmering at the edges of her awareness, but her focus is inward, anchored in joy. For the first time, she is not weighed down by sickness or regret. She is only here, now somehow healed, beloved. But what will happen when the world rushes back in, when the crowd surges and the moment passes? Could a touch so small bear fruit that lasts forever? As she stands in the quiet, holy presence still humming within, another current moves through the crowd, a sudden pause, the hush of expectation. Stillness, like a held breath. Something is about to change. Do you feel the hush when hope settles in? Stay with her, for the story is only just opening. The crowd moves forward, ever restive, pressing around Jesus with urgency. Their feet shuffle, voices blend in longing and laughter. But in the illusory safety of anonymity, she lingers behind, trembling and whole for the first time. And yet he stops. As if the entire tide of people shifts and hushes, Jesus pauses, a gentle question blooming in the sudden stillness. Heads turn, whispers ripple. Everyone wonders at his delay. She can feel his presence questing through the crowd, a searching, aware, utterly attentive spirit. The eyes of love scan the faces, the bodies, the hearts. There is a strange knowledge, a certainty, in the way he lingers. Is it possible? Could he be looking for her? Her heart gives a start. Fear mingles with awe. All her life, she has desired only to be unseen. Now, every beat of her heart prays for both concealment and revelation. But what if the Lord leaves the 99 to look for the one? Time stretches thin. The crowd falls silent, breath held as if the next moment could open 1,000 doors. She feels exposed, not by accusation, but by possibility. She tries to step back, to melt into the background. But her spirit, touched by grace, refuses to disappear again. Could it be that the one who spun the galaxies is now searching just for her? If you have ever felt overlooked, would you dare imagine that God himself seeks you out? The pause lingers. What will Jesus do next? Sometimes it is in being found that we discover our true healing. Wait a little longer. The answer draws close. He turns unhurried, unflinching, his gaze sweeping over the multitude. The crowd shifts, confused. Jesus' voice rings out, gentle but insistent, filling the space not with accusation, but with wonder. Who touched me? And as it is written in the book of Luke, chapter 8, verse 45, Master, the multitude throng thee and press thee, and sayest thou, who touched me? But Jesus' eyes remain intent, searching, soft with invitation. He is not angry, not defensive. It is as though he delights in the secret that has just unfolded. He waits, he wants to know. Her heart pounds in her chest. How can she step out from the places she has spent so long concealing herself? Yet this question is an open door, and somehow his voice unravels her fear more than it tightens it. What does it mean to be noticed by the Son of God? To have your trembling, uncertain faith brought out of shadow into the light. Something sacred stirs, an invitation, fragile and real. The silence does not accuse, it embraces. Jesus seems to say, show me your story, even the parts you fear to reveal. But what if the gaze of Christ is not to expose, but to heal? She stands motionless, aware that this is where her story turns. All her life she has believed attention was danger, that to be seen was to be dismissed. But what if being seen by Jesus is nothing like being seen by the world? His question lingers in the hush. Who touched me? What would it be like for him to wait just for you? The crowd holds its breath. Will she step forward? Stay near? The next moment, is filled with the seeds of all new beginnings. Her hands tremble, her breath quivers on her tongue. For so many years, secrecy has wrapped her like a second skin. Now, under his gaze, she no longer wants to hide. She steps forward, knees unsteady. Each step feels like unclasping a shackle, releasing what her heart has carried for so long. The crowd parts. Every pair of eyes lands on her, but she sees only him, Jesus, whose kindness stretches out with every breath. She falls at his feet, not out of duty, but necessity, her story trembling out in words she cannot fully hold back. Tears flow freely, grief and gratitude mingling in rivers that bear away old shame. She tells what has happened, every burden unraveling in the telling. 12 years of suffering, 12 years of loneliness, 12 years of prayers half believed, of spending all and finding nothing until this moment. What happens when the secret you feared becomes the story of your faith? He listens, not simply with his ears, but with his whole being. His presence wraps her, makes even confession safe. I cried unto the Lord with my voice, and he heard me out of his holy hill. Psalm 3:4. Will there be rebuke? Will he turn ashamed of her? Or will he, as promised in ancient words, draw near to the brokenhearted and save the crushed in spirit? The crowd waits uncertain, but beneath her words, hope pulses, fragile and real. She has given him everything, her entire fragile story. She has nothing left to lose. And you, what would happen if your deepest wounds became your greatest offerings to God? Stay for the answer. Sometimes, glory grows from broken beginnings. He bends toward her, not with judgment, not with hesitation, but with infinite tenderness. The air is golden, buoyed by his gentle compassion. He places a hand upon her bowed head, and with a voice soft as first light, says the word that will echo through her soul until her final breath. Daughter, not stranger, not sinner, not outcast. Daughter. It is a title that heals deeper than any wound, a belonging that cannot be earned or destroyed. She has not just received healing, she has received an identity. What does it mean to belong to him completely? With that word, Jesus weaves her into the family of faith. No longer nameless or unseen, no longer defined by sickness or shame, she is claimed by the very one she dared to touch. Behold, what manner of love the Father hath bestowed upon us, that we should be called the sons and daughters of God. 1 John 3:1. He lifts her chin with infinite care, his face radiant with love. Daughter, thy faith hath made thee whole. Go in peace, and be whole of thy plague. Mark 5:34. Peace falls on her like rain on scorched earth. His words fill her soul, her story, her entire sense of self. But what if you too belong before you believe, are loved before you heal? The moment hovers, a threshold one never wants to cross away from. How does it feel to be called, known, and claimed by God himself? This word, daughter, opens a door that cannot be closed. Will you step through it? will you listen for your own name? Stay with this belonging. The truest healing comes softly, gently, in the time between heartbeats. She looks up, face wet with tears, breath caught somewhere between sob and laughter. For the first time in what feels like forever, her eyes lift to the sky, an endless, star-pulsing dome, breathless with promise. A weight lifts from her, sinew by sinew, sorrow by sorrow. The word daughter settles on her like new skin. Her spirit feels both raw and radiant. The spaciousness of peace envelopes her. She breathes in deeply, the scent of olive trees, warm dust, and hope. Even the stars seem to pulse with grace. Is this peace everlasting? She clings to it, timidly at first, then with more certainty. What if peace is not just a feeling, but a presence, a person? What if it is something that moves with you, a gift you cannot lose because you did not earn it? The sky above is a cathedral of possibility. Each constellation tells a story. Each flash of starlight, a reminder that heaven's gaze never falters. Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee, because he trusteth in thee. Isaiah 26:3. More than healed, she is changed. The forgiveness, the grace, the restoration each lingers on her skin and in her soul. She has become a testament to the mercy that will not let go. But can peace last? Or is it as fleeting as a star's light, gone before one even notices? The quiet wraps her, but questions still wander in her heart. Perhaps the journey of peace is just beginning. Will you rest here, under the same sky? The dawn has not yet come. Every step she takes now feels lighter, as if song has been woven into the soles of her feet. Her body, once a prison, moves freely, her spirit rising with every careful, grateful stride. But how does a woman live in healing after so many years of torment? Is she truly ready to believe this is her new life? Has wholeness actually taken root? Or will fear call her back to the shadows? Freedom is both exhilarating and terrifying. Where there was once pain, now there is unfamiliar spaciousness. She almost mourns for her old ache. It was the map she used, her only companion. She wanders the market, eyes open, noticing colors, faces, laughter. She is invisible no longer. Joy flickers at her lips, hesitant but shining. But with every new step, doubt nudges. Is it safe to trust this happiness? Or will it too someday vanish? Could it be that healing is not a destination, but a journey one gentle, daring footfall at a time? She chooses, over and over, to walk forward. Even as uncertainty tugs at her, she refuses to surrender to old fears. Each breath, each simple action, a stance toward new life. For ye shall go out with joy and be led forth with peace. Isaiah 55:12. What would your own life look like if healing took up full residence, sang through your every morning? Will you allow yourself to become who God says you are, whole, chosen, beloved? She does not know exactly how, but she will try. Perhaps the next step is the bravest. Are you ready to keep walking? There are still questions riding on the wind. And freedom, like all miracles, must be learned by living. As the sun dips behind the city's edge, life around her stirs with the movements of dusk. People gather baskets. Children are called home, but she lingers in the quiet after the miracle. Something anchors her to this place, a holy pause resisting the world's rush onward. She sits beneath the shade of a fig tree, cradling new peace like a lamp in cupped hands. She closes her eyes, hearing the last strains of the day. A songbird here, a laughter there, the hush as shops close. Time slows, and in this hush she feels God's breath near. What if the pause is where real transformation fully unfolds? In the stillness, her heart is tender, fragile, and expectant. No crowd, no hurry, only presence, thick and real as the summer air. She listens inwardly. Every old story, every ache, every hope laid bare before the Lord who has called her by name. She begins to understand. The healing was not the end, but the invitation into a lifelong abiding. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46:10. Is there a sacred gift in staying behind, in letting the hush do its work? Does God whisper his greatest truths in the places where we choose stillness? She breathes, letting his love knit together the places that were once torn. She does not rush. She does not need to. What might you find if you lingered after your own storm, letting silence teach you what words cannot? Transformation is patient. Sometimes the biggest miracle is the courage to wait. Will you remain a while? The stillness holds promise, yet night hovers once more, cloaking the city in its soft embrace. She carries a singular word in her spirit, glowing brighter than lantern or star, daughter. It settles inside like warmth in winter, undiminished by the falling dusk. She finds herself whispering it beneath her breath, savoring the sound, not as a distant possibility, but as her deepest reality. Can one word change everything? Can one voice, his voice, erase the sting of 1,000 days of loneliness? As she walks the quiet lanes home, the world feels different. People pass, their words are softer, or perhaps it is her heart that hears with new ears. She stops beneath a cypress tree, palms pressed to her chest, repeating the sacred echo, daughter, beloved, chosen. For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace, and not of evil, to give you an expected end. Jeremiah 29:11. She does not want the moment to end. She wants to bottle the warmth, hold on to it forever. But even so, she knows the world will test her new name. Will this word last through every silence? What will tomorrow require of her faith? Sometimes, the truest miracles must be remembered again and again. Will you carry his words with you, too, through every night? Daughter, let it ring. It is the sound of love remaking everything. Rest in its echo, for dawn waits just beyond. She lies on her mat beside a small flame, the world gently quieting around her. In the hush, she lets memory drift softly over the contours of her day, his eyes, full of kindness, his voice, gentle with power, his presence near and unhurried. She traces the curve of the lamp's light upon the wall, comforted by its steady glow. Tonight, she is safe, soul and body alike. She surrenders the old fear to this new shelter, letting her heart rest where so long it has only survived. How do you rest when your soul is finally safe? She finds herself smiling, surprised at the newness. Sleep comes gently, not haunted by dread, but draped in peace. She nestles deeper, listening for the hush of God's voice in the stillness. I will both lay me down in peace and sleep. For thou, Lord, only makest me dwell in safety. Psalm 4:8. Tonight, healing is not just relief. It is a new way of being, carried quietly into dreams. Every breath is a prayer of gratitude, every moment a testimony. The world outside may swirl with its own cares, but within, there is only the warmth of being seen, known, called. Do you believe, even now, that divine rest is yours to receive? Let your weary places settle near the embers of his affection. Linger in the gentle promise that tomorrow will begin in grace. Sleep, for you are held. But the story does not close. Sleep is only the threshold to more wonder yet. The night is deep and glistening, the sky seeded with ancient stars. As she gazes upward from her pallet, she wonders if the constellations remember people like her, those whose lives are stitched together by sorrow and hope. She speaks softly, almost shyly, into the dark. Once I was forgotten. Now I am seen. She tells her story in low, reverent tones of longing and loss, of reaching in faith, of being called daughter by the Savior himself. There is a holy hush, as if even the night is listening. She knows that somewhere, someone else aches for hope. Her words, small and soft, rise and drift, carried perhaps by the wind to a soul far off, another heart stumbling in the wilderness, hungry for mercy. Might they hear these words somehow? Let the redeemed of the Lord say so, whom he hath redeemed from the hand of the enemy. Psalm 107:2. She whispers her song of restoration to the stars, planting seeds of testimony for strangers she will never meet. If God could find and name her, can he not find all the lost? How many lonely souls tonight yearn for a whisper of belonging? Let your own hope float up, joining her in the wide silence. Stories have a way of wrapping around the world, enfolding those who need them most. Perhaps you, too, will be heard. Somewhere, out beyond the arc of her voice, another soul sits in shadow. They too reach silently for Jesus, not daring to hope fully, not yet named, but longing in the quiet of their own heart. She imagines them, an old man bent with regret, a child weeping for a mother's embrace, a woman wrapped in shame. She has been all these before. Could it be that he is stopping for them now, just as he once stopped for her? The story does not belong to one, but to many. The mercy that named her daughter is wide as the sea, stretching endlessly from heart to heart, need to need. The Lord is nigh unto all them that call upon him, to all that call upon him in truth. She prays, wordless and sincere, that all who reach out, even in secret, might find themselves held. But what if your secret yearning shakes heaven itself? The miracle she received is not hers alone. Stay with the ache, for it is the raw place where God writes redemption. Who, even now, longs to be seen, may hope ripple outward, carrying light into every shadow. His mercy knows no shortage, no limit, no boundary. The healing she has received is but a single thread in the vast tapestry he is weaving, one we cannot yet see in its fullness. Her story is not the end, but a beginning, a living testimony that the hand of Christ moves through the ordinary, reaching, healing, naming. If he reached for her, who else might he be reaching tonight? Who else waits in darkness, not even daring to form the prayer aloud? Child, lover, wanderer, doubter, all are seen, all are welcome. And as it is written in the book of Lamentations, chapter 3, verses 22 through 23, it is of the Lord's mercies that we are not consumed, because his compassions fail not. They are new every morning, great is thy faithfulness. Her heart hums with gratitude, eyes shining with new tears as she realizes she is one small part of a mercy vast as eternity. If love overflowed for her, can you believe it might overflow for you too? The tapestry is unfinished. The hands of Jesus are still moving, still reaching, still calling names into the night. Will you dare to believe your story is woven there too? Rest in the unending mercy that always has room for one more. The story continues, wrapped in the gentle hush of inexhaustible grace.